EQ Video Tip. I'm your host, Eric Forsetter. As always, thanks again for watching another edition of this week's EQ Video Tip. Before we get started, let's review the goals of EQ Video Tip. What's on tap today? Well, we're going to talk to you about an article by Joanne Littman who talks about how to sound smarter when you're having small talk with someone, when you just meet someone. And this is actual research that comes to us from Harvard as well as Wharton Business School. Now, we all want to sound smarter. We all want to make sure that we have people who understand our education accomplishments, our work accomplishments, and we want to drop that in to sound like, hey, no, I'm really smart. I know I can help you out. But making small talk is very tough, and it's important to figure out what are the best ways that we can actually come across as a smarter person. Guess what? Dropping in that you went to a great school or that you accomplished this at work, that doesn't cut it. In fact, there's a completely different way to do it, because that approach that we just mentioned is the wrong way. Here's actually the way, according to Joanne says, as well as the research says, which will make you actually look and sound smarter. Tip number 1, actually seek advice from somebody. It sounds counterintuitive, but seeking advice actually makes you sound smarter. Now, why does it sound counterintuitive? Because if we're asking for advice, don't you think that means like we're not smart enough to answer our own question or the question that we're looking for advice on? Yes and no. The research actually says, according to Harvard, that they had students who went out there and asked the opinions for communicating with a certain partner. And they had 3 options. They could either say, hey, can you give me your advice on something? Or, hey, I hope you did well on something. Or they could say nothing. And resoundingly, the people who asked for advice had made the best first impressions according to all the research, because they didn't look incompetent to people. In fact, those people felt like these people are asking for advice because they feel like that person is competent and they're smart enough to know to ask for advice. So instead, make sure you ask advice so that people come back with a higher opinion of yourself or the advice seeker in this case. What we're going to do is we're going to go in and figure out, how do we become that person who can actually ask for advice and be the advice seeker that looks like a smart person. Tip number 2, and of course we're talking about the people who are getting asked for advice. They automatically think in part that they're flattered, and of course this person must be asking for advice because they think I'm smart, and in turn that makes them smart too. So how do you ask for advice? What do you do? Well, one of the things you can do is ask a lot of questions. And asking questions, it's not just asking rapid questions, but actual follow-up questions. So if you ask for someone's opinion on something, you can say, that's great, what made you lead to that opinion? Ask a follow-up question that draws in more information from the actual first answer. Really listen to what that question is. You can even say something like, hey, tell me more about why you feel this way. In doing so, you're actually creating more trust between the two parties that are talking and gathering more factual information according to the advice giver so that they understand what you're looking for. And in turn, creating more trust between you and that person. Tip number 2, banish the fear. We talk about embracing the awkward. It's so important when you're going to ask advice. Just banish the fear. It's okay to be vulnerable at times. You will engender more trust. It's important that you overcome that obstacle of, hey, I'm not sure I'm ready for this, or I don't know if I should ask for advice. Asking for advice proves that you're vulnerable, but it also proves that you're willing to take in other people's opinions to help you make the right decision, to do the things that will make you better and improve yourself over time. So take a moment, banish the fear, get over the anxiety, and ask that question. Our last tip. Remember that new person or acquaintance is not your best friend. So don't give them your whole 40-page business plan or ask them questions that they have to go research. Instead, keep it simple. Keep it to the point. Ask them a question and be cognizant of their time and the ownership that is required to do it. The goal really of this is to make a first impression, to make them interested in you and you become the most interesting person. In doing so, you're asking questions to get them interested and become the most interesting person in that room. make sure that you take the time to acknowledge them as well and say thank you for their opinion. But again, recognize the time limitations on their side as well. That's a wrap for this week's EQ video tip. Hopefully you enjoyed the tip. Again, take these tips, customize them, make them yours so that you can be the person with the best first impression when you're meeting and having small talk with someone else. So that concludes our EQ video tip for today. Try incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine. But remember, use what works best for you and personalize it for yourself. Thank you always to our great research team for providing us with some great tips today. As always on EQ Video Tip, we want to end with gratitude. So thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Here are some resources that you can use if you want more information on EQ going forward. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.